oh. Katika moyo wa taifa hili, chini ya anga la samawati, kuna roho inayochipuka, maadili madhubuti na halisi. Kutoka milimani hadi kwenye tambarare, kutoka miji hadi baharini, tunasimama kwa uhuru, kwa imani na familia. Tunaingia kwa kina katika kile tunachoamini.
Ever caught yourself wondering, if things might just be better somewhere else?
Yeah.
Maybe just a quick thought scrolling through your feed.
Happens all the time, I think.
Well, today we're going to dive into a story that really hits that question, but from a pretty specific angle.
Right. We've got this account described as a black leftist individual who actually made the move to Africa.
And then came back to the U.S. with some, let's say, unexpected thoughts.
Exactly. And we're looking at this through a ZeroHedge article that picked up on a social media post about it, one that apparently got a lot of attention.
Okay.
So our goal here isn't just to tell the story, but to kind of unpack the ideas behind it. Things about American identity, culture, how we perceive racism, all based on what's in this article.
Got it. So the article itself, it starts with this premise, right? That maybe a lot of Americans, not necessarily the super rich, but everyday people, might not quite realize the advantages they actually have living here.
Yeah, it brings up that old saying, the grass is always greener.
Right. Like you need to actually go somewhere else to see your own lawn, clearly.
And the article ties this pretty directly, actually, to certain viewpoints. It suggests that maybe some strong criticisms of America, particularly from a progressive standpoint, might come from a place of, relative comfort compared to much of the world.
So the idea is that basic survival issues might overshadow concerns about national image elsewhere.
That's what the article posits. Yeah, it challenges the idea that there's nothing good about the American experience, fundamentally.
Interesting setup. And this leads into the main story, the individual's experience.
Exactly. So according to the piece, this person, identified as a black leftist, moved to Africa, hoping, it seems, to find a better fit, maybe a sense of belonging.
But the reality wasn't quite the expectation.
Apparently not. The article mentions running into things like scammers, grifters.
Oh, boy.
And even just missing basic conveniences. It actually singles out snacks.
Snacks. Wow. Okay, that's specific.
It is, and maybe it sounds trivial, but it points to those, deeply embedded aspects of daily life we just take for granted.
Yeah.
But the real kicker, the core point reported from this person's posts, was this surprising conclusion they supposedly reached.
Which was?
A preference, believe it or not, for dealing with American racism, their word, quoted in the article over the specific set of problems they encountered abroad.
Wow, okay. That's quite a statement.
It is. And the article highlights that these complaints went viral.
Right.
And the interpretation offered by ZeroHedge is that this whole episode kind of exposed what they call a common leftist delusion.
A delusion that the U.S. is, one of the worst places on earth?
Something like that. It's framed as this sort of unexpected reality check seen from outside that particular bubble, as the article presents it.
So how does the article connect this personal story back to a bigger picture?
Well, it uses it as a springboard to talk about immigration patterns. It makes the counter-argument that, despite all the criticism America gets, it's still a place where vast numbers of people want to come.
Okay, contrasting immigration to the U.S.
With immigration from the U.S., the article claims that relatively few Americans, unless they're quite wealthy, actually choose to leave permanently.
That brings us to some broader points the article makes, right? About Black Americans moving abroad more generally.
Yes, this is where it gets quite pointed. The article flat out states that most Black Americans simply cannot assimilate after relocating to Africa.
Whoa. Okay. That's a sweeping statement.
And it adds most Americans don't do well in regions devoid of Western culture. Again, very broad assertions presented in the source.
So the idea being that cultural adaptation is harder than maybe people assume.
That seems to be the angle.
Yeah.
It suggests that while money can smooth over a lot of things,
Sure.
middle-class expats often find it really tough going.
And it brings in examples to back this up.
It does. It mentions black comedians and celebrities who've apparently warned people against this idea of going back to Africa.
Any specific names?
Yeah, it specifically names Patrice O'Neill
Oh, wow.
and references a quote attributed to him included in an embedded tweet in the article that describes Africa in, well, very harsh terms. Let's just say cockhole is the term used in the quote.
Yikes. Okay, so the article is framing this not as a totally new sentiment, but one that's been voiced before within the Black American community itself, according to their sources.
Precisely. And all of this builds towards, I'd say, the most provocative question the article raises.
Which is?
It asks, could what some black leftists in America see and experience as racism actually be something else?
Something else, like what?
The article coins a term, cultural burnout.
Cultural burnout. What do they mean by that?
They describe it as a kind of exhaustion or weariness from other groups in response to what the article calls the perceived baggage that the Black American community tends to bring with them.
Wow. Okay, that's a really loaded concept they're introducing there.
It's extremely. The implication is that maybe some negative interactions aren't rooted in classic racism, but in this sort of societal friction related to perceived cultural traits or historical narratives.
So wait, the article is suggesting if this burnout thing is real,
Then what?
then paradoxically, Black Americans might actually get more, I don't know, leeway or understanding in America than they would elsewhere.
That's exactly the conclusion the article proposes. It argues that other societies might be even less willing or perhaps less equipped to handle these perceived cultural differences or this baggage it mentions.
Okay, we absolutely need to stress this again. Everything we're discussing here is coming directly from the analysis and viewpoints presented in this specific ZeroHedge article and the social media stuff it references.
Absolutely crucial point. We are relaying the arguments they make, not endorsing them or judging their validity ourselves.
Our job is just to unpack what's in the source material for this deep dive.
Exactly. To understand the perspective being offered and the connections being drawn within that specific piece.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the main threads we pulled from this article. We started with the story.
Right, the anecdote of the black leftist moving to Africa, finding it unexpectedly difficult, and reportedly preferring the challenges back in the U.S.
And how the ZeroHedge article uses that story to question negative portrayals of the U.S., arguing maybe some advantages are overlooked.
Check. Then we looked at the broader claims about assimilation difficulties for Black Americans in Africa, according to the article.
And the references to celebrities warning against it.
And finally, that really controversial idea the article floats, this concept of cultural burnout as a possible alternative explanation for some perceived negative interactions.
Leading to their suggestion that American society might, in some ways, be more accommodating than others in this specific regard.
Right, which brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
Given everything presented in this article, the anecdote, the interpretations, the burnout theory, why do you think someone's experience relocating could be so different from what they imagined? What underlying assumptions about, say, culture or identity or just how societies work might be clashing with reality?
Yeah, when someone considers moving somewhere completely different, how do those expectations stack up against what they actually find?
Exactly. It really makes you think about the sheer complexity of cultural identity, the different ways people see the world, and maybe the assumptions we all carry without even realizing it.
Katika moyo wa taifa hili chini ya anga la samawati, kuna roho inayochipuka, maadili madhubuti na halisi. Kutoka milimani hadi kwenye tambarare, kutoka miji hadi baharini, tunasimama kwa uhuru, kwa imani na familia. Tunaingia kwa kina katika kile tunachoamini, maadili ya kihafidhina yameunganika rohoni mwetu. Kwa ujasiri na heshima tutasimama